Good morning, everybody. Good to be back in our area. I've spent the week in Boise, and I thought I'd spend the time with you this morning just talking to you about some of the things that have gone on in my visit to Boise. I think probably the most important thing for me to talk to you about is the legislature is in session. I had the opportunity to talk with all of our legislative folks and a whole bunch of other folks who are in leadership. There's some interesting things going on at the State House this year, and I think it's going to be important for each one of us to follow this and make sure that you make your voice heard. I think particularly here in Bannock County, we're all aware of the challenges that we have with property taxes. And that has become a major topic in Boise. I spent a lot of the time, matter of fact, I'd say probably 2/3 of the time was talking with folks about that and seeing the things that are being said at this point in time. Just a couple of thoughts that I'd give you about that, and some of this is personal, so I might be wrong and I might be right. I don't know. I don't want anybody to feel like that I'm saying this is definitely the way it is. But I personally recognize and understand the challenges that we have with property taxes. And as far as a personal feeling, I'm not sure that I'm all that happy with property taxes either. I hope everybody recognizes that. Each one of us have to pay property taxes. And right now there's some challenge with it. There at least needs to be some tweaking of the system. I've had discussions with one particular legislator who there is actually a discussion going about the potential of doing away with property taxes. Now again, recognize that a major portion of the funding of cities is tied to property taxes. So that discussion goes on to talk about what would be the alternative method, what would be the funding method for cities then. And there are some very interesting ideas. And I think, again, it's something that make sure you educate yourself on, make your voice heard. There are some things that would be very harmful also. I think there are folks who don't really understand what it takes to run a city, and some of the things that are being produced would be harmful, and we need to recognize that also. There are services that are provided to our citizenry by cities that are dependent upon property taxes. So again, we need to make sure that we follow this discussion. Make sure you follow it. There were at least 3, maybe 4 bills that were introduced during the time that I was in Boise that has started the discussion going. These are in the House of Representatives. I think if I have a major concern, several of us tried to get with some of the leadership of the House and talk to them about our budgets and show them how the budget process worked. A couple of the cities that were close there actually had copies of their budget that they could take in. They weren't interested in having that discussion with us. To me, that was a little disheartening, because if they're not going to take all of the information, understand what it is that property taxes does for the citizenry of this state, it's the same folks that elect us that elect them. They didn't seem to be interested in hearing about that. That kind of concerned me. I had the opportunity to talk to several of the senators, our representatives from this area, as well as several others, and it seems to me like that they are going to be much more open to having that total discussion. And that's what it's going to take. If we're going to fix a system that certainly is broken, it's going to take understanding the whole procedure and what it would take. So I just want to encourage everybody who listens to this blog, find out what's going on in Boise about this. It's going to have an effect upon us, and we need to make sure that the right things happen. And I think with the right kinds of discussions and some good ideas that are put out there, I think we can come to a conclusion that will be beneficial to everybody. There's several other things going on. I don't want to go into too much detail there, but it's important that we look at that. We have several things that help cities run and function appropriately that seems to me like they become annual discussions. This year there's a little bit less of that, and it's probably because property taxes has taken that #1 spot. But there will be other things. So follow this session. They'll be in session for the next 2.5 months or so. It's important to make sure you know what's going on. The other thing I just wanted to touch base really quick with you about, I was invited to the White House today, and I was not able to make arrangements to go on, and I feel a little bit sad that I was not, because it was going to be quite an interesting experience. They had several top-level people from the administration who were going to address the mayors of the United States of America. And then this afternoon, I think it was about 4 o'clock this afternoon, President Trump was going to address us. As I looked over the agenda, I did register for the event as I was trying to see if we could get the logistics worked out to get there, and I was not. But as I looked over the agenda, it had some real good things there. And I've made some contacts with a couple of the folks that I met in Washington, D.C. last summer, and they're going to send me the information that comes from that, and I'm going to have some discussions with them about what happens. But to me, I think the thing I wanted to point out about that, this administration seems to be very open to talking to those of us who are at the very most local levels of government. And to me, that's a real positive thing. Face it, this is where we live. This is where we do our day-to-day things, and it really is important for that discussion to be had. So again, you might want to keep track of that. I don't know if there'll be a lot of reporting on that, but I'll make sure as I receive the information about what that was that I share some of that with you. But I just want you to know there's a lot of good things going on in our community right now. We've got a lot of good people who are working hard for us. And I'm grateful for each one of you. We just have a wonderful community. I attended meetings for the Association of Idaho Cities over the last 3 days. Those of you who don't know, I'm in the leadership of that. I'm actually the second vice president. And the year following this one, I will be the president of that organization. This city is doing a lot of things that's leading out in our state, and a lot of it's because of the population that lives here. And I'm so grateful for each of you, for the attitudes that you have, for the support that we felt, for the good ideas that have come from our community to help us to be in place to where we want to be. The last thing I'm going to say is we know that the new City Hall is going to be built during this coming year. The plans have been finalized, and those should go out to bid within the next 3 to 4 weeks. And we're hoping that we'll be able to break ground as soon as the weather will allow us to. So just grateful for each one of you. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you again next week.